A very good day to all of you, everyone. My name is Janith Iddawala, and I am joined today here with Dr. Vipula Wanigasekera, former diplomat, tourism official, and he's also currently an academic of Edith Cowan University and Australian College of Business Technology. Dr. Wanigasekera has also been conducting spiritual discussions for tourists several years since 2013 when he first debuted his book on pointers to enlightenment. So this interview was actually prompted by one of his recent articles titled The Power of the Unknown. So Ayubowan and welcome Dr. Wanigasekera. So just to start off this discussion, Dr. Wanigasekera, what made you write this article? Because for someone who reads it first, it appears that you seem to be contradicting some of the common beliefs that we have as humans.
Yes. Now, as you know, so much has been said and written on the current pandemic, which has affected almost all the countries in the world, including Sri Lanka. So therefore, I thought I will also pen something down as a contribution towards these efforts for people to come out of this from the spiritual point of view. So when you say the power of unknown, this notion is generally rejected as the human existence is resting on what is known, experientially or otherwise. But anyone who is curious enough can probably grasp something from this article, although it is not falling within accepted formats or norms. To be honest, I'm even surprised that the three reputed newspapers carried this article with no edition of sale. At the same time, this can open up a dialogue that would make a turnaround in many beliefs and perceptions on human existence. So there is a kind of an invitation for a dialogue, and it's a springboard for people to engage in some kind of a discussion as to what is unknown as against what the human thinks is known, and the power against the unknown in that sense.
Right. So thank you very much for that introduction. So for the benefit of everyone who is watching this video, shall we quickly summarize the principal message that you're trying to get out from this article? Especially you mentioned, you related it well to the COVID-19 pandemic. So perhaps in relation to that as well, what is this principal message that you're trying to put out from this article?
It is primarily an attempt to project the importance of unknowability in life and existence. The inability for humans to understand the movements of the universe. I have given some examples. If you have read the article, I have cited this, how this depletion of ozone layer was the talk of the town then. And they were saying that, you know, had it continued, it would have been the end of the human race. And the Great Depression prior to the Second World War. And all these have an underpinning message that there is an undeniable unknowability, which the human beings are trying to fathom out through knowledge-based versions. So I'm not suggesting that the knowledge is not useful, so I don't think anyone will get me wrong. But knowledge is useful and essential. But what I'm trying to say is that what is happening, or in spiritual language we call it what is, can never be explained, nor can be predicted. So when I say what is, it includes everything from the sun, the moon, the universe, the galaxies, down to thoughts, feelings, emotions, including memories about the past and future experiences. interpretation. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is all there is this what is, or immediacy of what is happening. Everything else is a mere assumed a correlation or a post theory. I hope you know what I mean is post theories. You look back and then you theorize it. And some of these, most of the things that you have developed, these core theories or post theories or correlations, are not really true. One contradicts the other. So that's what I'm trying to say. At the end, although you know we learn in the universities that how you need to be proactive and visualize, but here you are in a completely a helpless situation where what is more important is how you are going to react to the situation, and that is contrary to what everyone is learning, and everyone is waiting for a vaccine. That's a priority number one. And who would have thought that the humans are going to be this much helpless at some point of time?
Of course. So this philosophy or this idea of yours, is this connected to any form of religion or any philosophical beliefs?
Yes and no. Now, most religions and philosophies are teaching you what the humans ought to be doing in this life. That is something between good and bad. But when you read religious and philosophical literature, there are many versions that require interpretation. Since these interpretations are not in line with the social and knowledge-based models, people hardly discuss them. That is, for instance, I'm not trying to bring in religion, but Jesus Christ once said, lose yourself to find yourself. And another occasion, Jesus has said, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. To look at Buddhist philosophy, Lord Buddha has mentioned the notion of no self in Anattalakkana Sutta, which is actually the second discourse after the enlightenment. So these teachings cannot be directly understood, but that does not mean they are to be discarded or they are not to be probed. They may well be pointers that need to be probed at some point of time in life. So my articles, not only this, but other articles, revolve around this message about the importance of an inward journey, because the human beings live with this next moment of what is next, what is next, what is next, but they are never here. Nor do they have time to look at themselves and to have an understanding about their own thoughts, feelings, emotions. Meditation is a bit of a heavy word, but I don't think, perhaps this is the best time to indulge ourselves into this kind of a study. And this was the reason why I wrote this. So that is the philosophy behind this. It's not my message, and it is a message that is cutting across the world. And if you look at most of what the modern spiritual leaders are talking, it revolves around what is happening. And this is all there is. And tell me anything else other than what is. You see, you name it, it's what is. If you say this is a thought about yesterday, that is what is happening now. So that's as simple as that. But having said that, this is not a spiritual message that can be understood through knowledge, because probably knowledge has nothing to do with this. A person who has not studied any philosophies might just observe himself and the nature, might grasp the message that I'm trying to convey.
So in preparation for this interview, I was actually reading a few more materials as well. So on the Guardian newspaper, I read this article by where it quotes this famous British philosopher Bertrand Russell. So what he says is that religion is actually up to a certain extent based on fear, and also partly it is the terror of the unknown, and partly it is that belief of you have someone or something to stand by your side when things are not going your way, that makes people religious up to a certain extent. So in your own thinking, do you think that this power of the unknown has the potential to actually influence people to be more religious?
It depends on how you define religion. Being spiritual, being religious, being good. I do not know how people are recognizing this. But all what I'm saying is there is this undeniable duality, meaning that there is no good without bad. There is no black without white. And everything has opposite sides. And that's the way the world spins. There is always a duality within which the sense of the individual or separate self arises. And for the separate self, all what you said was true. Due to the fear, due to all this, you try to hang on to something. And then it is always the expectation of the next moment, whether it could be something better or it could be something worse. And live up to that. And that is what I believe is what we have said about it.
So what do you think is the main benefit or the main message that you are trying to get across to the people who are reading this article?
Yes, this is the point, because there's actually nothing in this message for individuals in terms of their egoistic aspirations. In fact, there is nothing. The message conveys nothing for individuals. This piece that I wrote speaks of unconditional love. In fact, it quotes an article which I read recently on the COVID-19. And this particular article says it had brought a windfall to the wilderness, citing the wildlife and how the wildlife is thriving because of COVID. So when the universe is doing the repairs, humans are not given priority. You see, the priority seems to be the perfect balance of this so-called duality, saying it's no consolation for humans. Therefore, fortunately or unfortunately, this is not a kind of a message with which the people can look forward to the inner peace or something with which you will have a kind of a peace of mind. That's not what I'm trying to communicate. The unknowability, it revolves around what is happening, and what is happening cannot be described except for this knowledge of the human beings with correlations and force theories that are not really true.
So even if I was a kid, I think even if I go and ask a child or even someone of my age at this stage, what kind of superpower you would like to have, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would come and say they would like to predict the future and they would like to know what is happening in the future, right? Where a lot of people are so engulfed and so caught up in the idea where they try to know what is happening in their future as much as possible. So for someone who wants to embrace this policy or who wants to grasp this idea, do you think there is a possibility that they can draw a fine line in between things that they should know and that things that should remain unknown?
In a way, the power of the unknowability also spells out the fact that okay, there are aspirations, there are expectations. So one is working towards that. And whenever there are obstacles and whenever you are unable to reach your goals, there is a consolation because you always have this idea. I'm into this game of unknowability because unless you are heavily indulged in these theories, okay, you work hard, then you become wealthy, or you are the best strategist, and then you become a conglomerate of a particular business. You know, these are correlations, and they may be true, may not be true. I mean, I'm sure you would have read most of these leadership theories and the traits of the leaders. Okay, some leaders are quiet, some leaders don't discuss. They are loners, and they go for their targets and they achieve. Whereas others, then they talk a lot, and then they believe in teamwork. Or perhaps, although I said there is no benefit for individuals, this may to a great extent bring down, what shall I say, a level of depression, a level of frustration, when people have to come across situations that are uncontrollable. In business, of course, we have this so-called the macro environment, and then we analyze these economic, these political, and we try to develop strategy. And the COVID-19 is a perfect example for this. And this was, of course, some people were just predicted that there can be a virus, and if that comes, we wouldn't know what to do. But it has come, and now that has to be dealt with. So, and the message that I think the humans have to understand is, I mentioned this word unconditional love, which means that in a situation like this, how do we help each other? And in a situation like this, the business entities collapse, and then people lose their jobs, and then the people who are depending on daily work, they also wouldn't know what to do, and people who are heavily indebted to the banks. So unless everyone understands the real situation, we start helping each other, realizing the fact that this is something that has to be dealt with until such time the humans are able to. So that's the kind of a message, because otherwise, every time, even when you send children to school, and these are some of the things that are taught even in universities, how to be a leader and how to achieve something and how to reach goals and how to become someone. But at the same time, you have another side of the story as well. And all I'm saying is that why not be conscious of this unknowability? And you are just an individual, and you think you have the. In fact, I don't want to get into that because this is a message which challenges, in a way, this so-called free will and choice. It goes head on with that. Do we really have the free will? I mean, do you have the free will to choose your thoughts? If you really ask yourself, am I the one who is choosing my thoughts to make decisions? Tea or coffee, and you choose coffee, and later you think I chose coffee. You see, so all what I am saying is there's another theory that explains that tea or coffee, and then coffee, and thought number 3 comes and tells you you are the one who chose coffee, which is just an illusion. It's not there. The thought number 3 is an illusion. So this is the kind of a thing that this spiritual message that I'm trying to communicate. Hey, there's another side to which one can look at life and existence. It's a different perspective altogether. And once again, I'm not the one. It's not my message. This is something that is cutting across the world, and I have grasped something, and I'm kind of this is what comes out of me, really.
So do you think this idea of the power of the unknown contradicts or challenges certain sectors or certain industries or certain belief systems such as astrology, where their main premise is based on perhaps predicting or just seeing what happens in the future?
Well, an astrologer might come and tell you something. Okay, this can happen to you. This can not happen to you. And later on, whatever that happened, which the astrologer has said will happen, he'll quickly take the credit, and whatever that has not happened, he wouldn't even be there to explain. I suppose that's probably a problem in this part of the world, because people are. But then that is also another profession, I suppose, and some people are in fact thriving on this. And of course, in this area of unknowability, that is also something that is happening. It's nothing to evaluate this is right and this is wrong. It encompasses everything. It encompasses all the theories. It encompasses all the versions. Nothing is right and nothing is wrong. But to be conscious of that is something that humans, or majority of the humans, tend to reject.
Your message overall still, I believe, up to a certain extent, I think it is something that cannot be marketed in a bigger platform, or it might not be something that a lot of people would choose to follow or even choose to accept. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, in a way. This is a bitter message from individuals who seek a better next moment. But this message can reach those who have been involved in some kind of spiritual search, and it can be a total turnaround from what the humans have been conditioned into. But unfortunately, this message is taken through a negative connotation. And when you say that the separate sense of self is an illusion, people tend to think that it's something to do with nihilism or nihilism, or it has a negative thing. But on the other hand, when you say what is happening and a thought that you are a separate self, traveling along a timeline, having goals, and then coming to an end at the end. When you say that is the illusory part of this what is, it tends to get rejected. So as you rightly said, it's not marketable. But that said, somehow in the back of some people, after having gone through, so to say, gone through the mill in their careers and in their jobs, and when they look back and when they realize how much of things that have materialized out of what I have planned, they begin to realize, no, it's not really. There's something else that can explain life and existence. So in spirituality, there are a whole lot of beliefs on which the practices are conducted. But when we say this is all there is, it encompasses everything. So that's why I said it's something that can be probed into, it's something that can be tested, it's something that can be researched into with your own experience. I mean, that is all you have. Everything else is either a belief or an opinion, or something that is stated in a scripture. And all you have is you and your experience, and see whether your belief about your experience is really true.
Right. So if we come back to this COVID-19 pandemic that we are in right now, and the situation that the entire globe is facing at the moment, a lot of the industries are reeling. Thousands and the thousands of people have lost their jobs. And in such a context where we see a lot of people are suffering from the disease and also from the outcomes of the disease, if you have to embrace this concept of unknown at this stage, do you think that will prevent, or that will kind of negate people being hopeful for a day that this disease would end, or there's a day that could come where this is no longer there?
Yeah, that is the notion of nihilism, because you are being negative about it. In fact, I would probably say that this is the most positive message in terms of social equality, justice, helping each other, conservation of biodiversity, protecting the environment, helping out each other. The original messages that have emanated from religions and philosophy, these are ideal times that people can really practice them. Otherwise, they are just traditions. It's like, I'm sure you would have studied this greenwashing. You know, people have suddenly become environmental conscious. No, you can be that now, because this is the message that is being given by the nature, and that you are not the superior. The man does not rule the world rules, or rather universe rules the man, and that message needs to be accepted, and probably that acceptance, that recognition will have a different benefits that the human beings have not enjoyed before. Why not try that out?
So in your article, you also highlight on the incompetencies of the global education system, on how education as we know today, or the universities or the colleges, to whatever that offers education in general, doesn't really prepare someone to tackle the real world problems that might come through this power of the unknown. Do you think there is a way that the education system could be better aligned to face these problems, perhaps with a better sense of spirituality in mind?
Yes, if you do that without using the word spirituality, because the moment you use the terminology spirituality, that is misunderstood. Then, of course, even the students might get the wrong idea that I am not here to become a monk or a preacher. What I'm trying to say is, yes, you have a point, but then it is somewhat paradoxical. It's like I go and teach marketing. In fact, I do teach marketing in the lecture hall, and I say, okay, you have these communication strategies, these what the advertising can do, these what the sales promotion can do, these what the personal selling can do, and this is the mix that you have to have. That knowledge is important to be given so that the students have that. But at the end, from the viewpoint of the truth, from the viewpoint of what shall I say, the unknowability, at the end I have to probably say, well, I have to disclaim the liability of all what I have told you, because this might not work, you know. And I'm look at most of the people who have succeeded in the business world, and do they have, I mean, have they ever claimed that I succeeded because of my BSc degree or master's degree or PhD, and that's what taught me how to do this? But there are enough post theories, you see. There are generally, most of the people who have succeeded, they go back and they look back and say, well, since I have done these things, it has brought me to this position. That's fine. But all what I'm saying is that knowledge, when I fall ill, I have to go to a doctor, and the doctor has a certain protocol to follow and diagnose. And that knowledge is essential. But again, it has its limitations. You can have a good doctor and you can have a bad doctor. And you can have a doctor who has a lot of ambitions and who is aspiring to be able, and you have a doctor who is a healer. You see the point? So my point is that, you know, what matters at the end, all what we teach in universities and colleges, do we teach them humanity? And every subject that we teach, to what extent do we communicate the need to express humanity? If you address that one point, just one point, it can change the entire world. But we don't do that. And it somehow has been missed out in syllabus. At the end of all the units that you teach, I think the last point is, what does this unit contribute to humanity? It's a simple thing, you know. Unfortunately, no one is interested. And if you place it there, even if you suggest to place it there, what are you trying to do? And are you a spiritual guy? You're trying to, bring in spirituality into this subject. Ultimately, that is what matters, and that is what the present pandemic tells us.
So on that notion on spirituality, once again, do you think that the belief or the idea of not knowing that what might happen in the future allows a person to attain a better or a more holistic level of spirituality as opposed to someone who is always constantly worried about what might happen in the future?
I think there is a small correction to be done. Now, when I mentioned this, the unknown or the unknowability or the mystery, if you want to call it, I didn't mean it from the viewpoint of the person. That's not what I meant it from the viewpoint of the universality, the overall picture. In other words, what shall I say, an iceberg that is crashing down in the North Pole has a correlation to the weather condition in the southern part of our country. That's all I'm saying. We can't separate these two. In fact, the most recent thing I read was the whales that were drifting to our shores, and they would have died if not for most of the people who went and pushed the whales back into the sea. And now there is this theory, they are saying it's because of this marine exercise that most of these warships were doing, and then they were creating all these signals and the radiation, whatever, the whales, and they get it, as you know. And that has disturbed their movements and the transition from one place to another, and eventually they got distracted and they were drifting towards the shore. Look at the adverse correlations. So they have to coexist.
So on a final note, Dr. Wanigasekera, you have been conducting a number of spiritual programs, especially for tourists who have been coming to Sri Lanka for almost 7 years now. What is the outcome or the output of these programs has been? How do you measure the success of all these programs that you've been doing in relation to spirituality for the past so many years?
And again, bringing this the unknowability. Now, when I wrote this book, if I were to write a book again, I wouldn't write the same book anymore, because that was the interest at that time. And it was not really a message, because it was a collection of all these spiritual versions mentioned by the modern spiritual leaders. And it is a kind of a compendium of the spiritual version, so to say. So I launched it, and to tourism industry, and there's tourism industry at that time. And I was invited to conduct these sessions by the industry members. And I also started this as an experiment, and it was totally not something that I had planned. It was not in my thought, nowhere in my thought. However, over a period of time, when I was having these dialogues, it's not a meditation. What I do is, it's a 1-hour program, and I do an introduction, and then I emphasize the need to look at life and existence from a different perspective, which sometimes I can be little, what shall I say, you sometimes have to be a little harsh when you are communicating, kind of take it or leave it. There are a lot of people, when I begin this session, I say, there is nothing for you. There is nothing that you can gain from this session. And some people get a little annoyed, and if I'm not gaining anything, why should I be here? They are having so many questions like that. But in such situations, I used to ask them, like, what would be your thought if you are given only a short period to live, for example? What will you want if someone says you are going to die, in a few weeks' time? What do you want? I'm not being negative, but all what I'm saying is that eventually all of us are coming to that, right? And when you look back, then you might be wondering, you should have spent our life differently. After all, this is how it's going to end anyway. But if anyone thinks that it's a kind of a negative message, no, that is not what I mean. So there is an introduction, and there is this emphasis for the need to look at yourself and take an inward journey. And there's a meditative session in the sense that how one can experience silence in a rush world, and that's a bit of a practice. And then the question and answers. So initially, when I did this, there was a kind of a great reception, and there was a word of mouth. So most of the tourists, when they were coming back, and they were asking, where is this guy who was conducting this session, because my friend told me. So somehow this caught up. So I was continuing this. Unfortunately, I can't do this full time, as you know that I'm teaching and I'm employed. So I used to do these sessions during weekends. I will continue because it's a nice thing, so to communicate with people and open up their mind into areas that they had not hitherto been thinking. So that's what I would do in the coming years too.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wanigasekera. And with that, we mark the conclusion of this brief synopsis that we had with Dr. Vipula Wanigasekera on his recently published article on Power of the Unknown. Thank you so much for joining with us today. And we wish you all the very best in your future endeavors. And we wish you all the success in all your activities in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.